Hi everyone, welcome to Veterans in Crisis podcast. Today we have Nick Wood. Nick's got a really long title, so I'm going to read it. Nick is the Business Development Manager for the Armed Forces and Uniformed Services at York University. Is that right?
It's just about York St John, yeah, because there'll be L on now, but it's the wrong
I left the
university.
St John out. Well, we're not starting again. Right, mate. Thanks for coming on.
No, thanks, Gav. Thanks for the invitation.
So we don't know each other, but we follow each other on LinkedIn. So I've noticed like the bits of work that you do, and obviously because of me working at the university, we have certain things in common. So I thought it would be nice to get you on, explain a bit about your work, but also your sort of because you were in the Navy, why you joined the Navy and not the Army, for instance.
Well, there's actually quite a good story behind that, actually.
You failed the fitness test.
Yeah, well, actually, I was quite fit then. I was a bit less podgy than I am these days. So obviously, I'd fail a fitness test now. It all goes down to watching a program about 1978 Sailor, because I'm getting on a bit now. I'm sort of 58, and it was HMS Ark Royal. The carriers. It was Phantom jets, Buccaneer jets, sailors going around the world, absolutely enjoying themselves. And I'm from Hull originally, and a little village just outside Hull. I thought, wow, that just looks the job for me. So yeah, it was always interested in aircraft and military and stuff like that. So I joined up. I literally, there was a choice. I did have a choice in my head when I went to the recruiting office in Hull. But it just so happened there was a great big chief petty officer stood at the door with a great big beard, and he looked at me and said, "What do you want to do?" And I went, "Join the Navy." So yeah, I think it was professional press gang in the 70s was still sort of pretty much going on. So yeah, but I joined the Navy Fleet Air Arm, started on commando helicopters, the old West 65s in the old days, I suppose. But I really wanted to get on the fixed wing, so the Harrier, waiting for the Harriers to come in, then the Harriers came in, transferred over the Harriers, and it was like, perfectly honest, I was like a kid with toys, big toys, and that's how I saw the military. It was something I always wanted to do. Bit naively, didn't sort of factor in going to the Falklands in 1982, of course. Bit naive that really, bear in mind what they paid to do. Part of the task force. Got married when we came back. Still married all these years later. So my wife's been military wife, lived in married quarters. But saying that, we had our first son, and I decided to leave just under 8 years. So I'm like quite a short career, really. And joined the prison service, one uniform for another, as many people do, of course. Spent 25 years prison service. And whilst I was in the prison service, did a bit of job changing around, worked substance misuse teams, offender management. And interestingly, I always sort of smile to myself when I sort of read your post, Vix. I created a thing called Veterans in Custody Support, of course, which is Vix. And the reason I did that, to be honest with you, is I noticed coming through our gates, if you like, when I was in offender management, quite a lot of ex-forces personnel, predominantly alcohol-related violence, as offending. And I created basically just a way of identification, because there wasn't anybody sort of really asking the question, have you served in the armed forces, the criminal justice system? So we started asking the question. And Vix, luckily, in the custodial setting, as it's called, or Vix says, it's carried on, but it relies on volunteering, as a lot of stuff does in the military world. But there's still staff sort of doing the identification and linking people up into community services. So that's sort of the journey. After leaving the prison service, I took on sort of a package, I suppose. I sort of tried to launch the first version of this CPD that I was doing. It was back in sort of like, I was thinking of launching it around sort of 2011, 2012. Armed Forces Covenant was pretty still much unknown, what it was, what it did. And I couldn't get any traction on it, to be honest with you. And I was about to sort of bin it all, just go stacking shelves at Asda, to be honest with you, trying to get a job in some way, shape or form. And by complete chance, I bumped into a guy, funnily enough, at York University, as I was just doing a talk about the work I'd done. He was X3 para, this guy, and he would become my boss, Peter Gray. Peter was the Associate Dean of Health and Life Sciences. Peter had served in the Falklands as a colour sergeant, and as he was going up Mount Longdon, he unfortunately took around and retrained when he left the paras as an OT. So I have got a soft spot for infantry soldiers, because my boss was 3 para, and he sort of hopefully he trained me well to deliver this training. The way this developed was because York St John's got quite a few training contracts, CPD contracts with the NHS.
Do you want to explain what CPD is?
Yeah,
to the
continuing
viewers?
professional development. Yeah, it's practitioners can access short courses, and that what they've learned to put into their practice. The CPD, what they wanted was about veterans awareness, basically, because obviously North Yorkshire, you got Catchick up there, you got Leaming, we got Leconfield, we got a lot of military presence, of course, up into the northeast, northwest, everywhere. And it was based around, they felt they didn't understand the journey of military personnel, and they kept hearing this civvies don't understand comment. And I was listening to your podcast with Yitka, and the same thing was mentioned there. So we looked at that and we thought, okay, what are we doing? What are people saying to us? Why are they saying that? How can we help people from a non-military background understand what people are saying to them? So I looked at it from a person-centered point of view, and I thought, what am I? I'm just a kid from Hull who joined up, wanting to be John Wayne, see the world, sort of thing. And I dare say a lot of us, we're just people. We join up, we put a uniform on, and we have a career in the military. So I thought the easiest way to help people understand what our journey's been like is look at it from a person-centered point of view, like an individual. So I'll take people on a journey from joining up. Why do they join up? What type of backgrounds they're from? Where they're from? I look at core values, C drills, which is obviously the military, you'll know of the army. So it's your acronym, so courage, discipline, respect, integrity, leadership, selfless commitment. And what I do is, one of the things I've had to learn at a late age, of course, is to academically prove what I believe is right. So I've been on an academic journey as well, doing masters and qualifications, even at a ripe old age that I am. So what I brought in is things like people know Maslow's hierarchy of need. A lot of people have heard about that. It's a triangle basically of our needs as people, what we're doing, we're sort of populating it all our lives. And then I bring in another model called Erickson's psychosocial model. It just talks about adolescence. Well, that's where most of us join up. And I was 16 when I joined up.
I was as well.
Yeah, I mean, most of us joined sort of 16, 18, vast majority, of course. So what I do is sort of just show people how we develop in the military, the language we hear around sea drills and core values, creating our identity, who we are, especially on selfless commitment. And that's an interesting one, because if you look in sea drills, the army one, it says putting the needs of the mission before personal interests. And what I point out to people is that military personnel, don't talk in I statements, they're talking we statements, because it's all about the team and helping each other out. And, if you're going from point A to point B, making sure everybody's okay and looking after each other. And of course, when it comes to sort of coming out of the military, sometimes civilian life can look a little bit selfish, because it's sometimes about the I statements and I'm in it for this and I'm in it for that. So you can see how it sort of causes a little bit of friction for some people, because they don't replicate that teamwork ethic that military personnel have. And yet, brilliant, it's a great transferable skill. What manager doesn't want a good team player as a member of staff, because it's a really valuable transferable skill. So yeah, that's what it does. It takes people on journey through that, and then into transition, and then what transition is like for service personnel, the reasons people transition out, them and the families. And I know you're a big advocate of actually looking at the whole armed forces community, and so am I. You've got wives, spouses, partners, kids. If you've been in Germany for forever how long, sometimes the kids have actually never lived in the UK, and then all of a sudden you're transitioning out, and the kids and your partner are having to relocate and actually start a new life, sometimes in the UK. So I talk about an adjustment reaction and try and normalize some of that, and actually say to people, through the career transition partnership services, out the resettlement services, the focus is generally on sort of employment, making sure you've got somewhere to live, critical to transition. I won't argue that. But I think when you've invested so much of yourself into the military, you know, it's that sense of family, that sense of belonging, you've taken actually probably the most unique and intense emotional journey you're ever going to take on your life, because, you know, you've invested so much in the people around you. So when you leave, you know, you're going to have that feeling of, you know, where's my mates now sort of thing, you know, where's my social network? So you're going to have to repopulate the old hierarchy of needs, the old Maslow bit again. And when I joined civilian life, I'd never been a working age civilian. You know, I was in my mid-20s, and obviously I'm reinventing myself as a working age civilian, albeit in a uniform job. But we all have to do that. Transition's inevitable. But of course, if you don't look at the adjustment around how you feel when you leave the military, it can leave a bit of a gap for some people. You know, well, I've little working with many veterans, as you know. A lot of people say, "Oh, I miss my mates." It's generally one of the first things that comes out.
It's the main thing. It's the main thing.
Absolutely, yeah. It's I miss my mates. And when you look back, you know, when I left, my mates are still serving. So I'm in the mid-20s with sort of like a billion old mates. So you're gonna have to sort of recreate this social network that you've sort of left behind. So what I try and do is actually show people that this adjustment reaction is partly normal if you think about it. You know, if you think that most people, if they move house, if they're non-military, if somebody move house, change your relationship, change your job. I mean, we've got this COVID thing going on at the minute. Of course, that's affecting everybody. We can't meet up. You know, a lot of the breakfast clubs can't meet up, so some people are feeling a bit isolated around that. But actually, sort of, you know, that can affect anybody. You know, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings at the end of the day, and so military, so non-military. So part of the adjustment experience, you could argue, it could be expected, but of course that's not part of the transition briefings. So the transition briefings tends to, like I said, focus on work, sort of employment, somewhere to live, critically, but it doesn't sort of say to you what you're going to experience when you leave, or that emotional experience, or that adjustment experience, just so you're prepared for it, to be honest with you. I use, in my opinion, and I've shared it with you, I share it off my Twitter page, I think it's one of the best transition tools out there, and it's by the Army, and it's called Transition to Civilian Life, the Emotional Pathway. It's written by, he's a psychologist, but he's also an Army reservist. And he basically talks about when you leave this place where you've invested so much of yourself in, you're going to, you know, it's not going to be unusual to have a normal reaction to that. You're going to miss it. Of course you are. The difference is being told that before you leave, you know. And I think a lot of people, if they're not told that, they can think a bit, you know, a bit like fish out of water feeling. You know, some of the core values don't look necessarily the same. The I and the we statements, how people sort of like teamwork. So what I try and do is show people from a non-military background how military personnel and their families might feel when they leave, where that comes from, and where that comment, civvies don't understand, sort of originates from. And the other part of that is just recognizing that when you're in the military, the fluffy stuff you don't tend to talk about so much. But of course, the fluffy stuff is actually the investment of yourself and your mates and your comrades around you. So what I try and sort of explain is that when people do ask for help, when, you know, and sometimes it takes people a long time to ask for help, as you know, running, you know.
Yeah, I think with alcohol problems, we did a study with alcohol problems, and the average age was 18 years before someone who left the military asked for help. Within that stage, though, I mean, you've got other problems, not only with your mental health, but your physical body. If you've been abusing alcohol for 18 years, or abusing since you left the forces, another 18 years, you know, because we all know everyone abuses alcohol in the forces. It just comes with the territory, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, deployments, end of deployments, sports, everything. It's very competitive. Be the best, of course, of the Army strapline, and everybody is competitive. You want to be the best. You want to be the best unit, regiment, squadron, ship, and it keeps everybody on the toes to learn more, of course, as well. But yeah, I mean, obviously in the military, a lot of the events do end up with alcohol, and quite a lot of it, of course. But then if someone's feeling a little bit isolated, lonely outside the military, they might turn to the alcohol as a bit of a sort of a crutch and a bit of a coping strategy, because that's what everybody used to do before. Of course, then that can lead to other, as you said, other elements coming in, relationships, employment, if it affects that. So what I try and sort of show people is that what people experience on transition is, lots of people do experience transition. Like say, if you change your job, change house, change location, but in the military, because you invest so much, it's quite an intense transition for you and possibly your family. You're not just, I would argue it's not a job. The military is not a job. I have a job. It's a lifestyle and a life choice. It's 24/7. It's 365 days a year. That's different to a job. So you're not leaving a job. You're leaving a whole holistic lifestyle, and you're gonna have a, when you put so much into it, you're gonna react to that. And unfortunately, some people adjust better than others. We do know, the evidence tells us most transition well. We don't really know what that looks like, of course, but because we don't really have the data. And that's another element, asking the question, identification of people. Where are they? Where do they live? How many people, does the GP see that are ex-forces? Because it's only lately they've got this new system called SNOMED. Actually, the Armed Forces, so it's got Armed Forces pages. All the old systems did have that in there. It wasn't common practice to register it, as with local authorities. So yeah, that's the question. What is a good transition? It could be different for all of us, of course.
I think when I left the military, I didn't want anything more to do with the military. So when they give you the bag of leaflets and stuff, they just went in the bin. I left from Berlin, just went in the bin. Didn't want anything more to do with the military. And I was lucky I'd kept the same doctor from whilst I was in, because I was only in the army for 5 years. So that part of the transition was easy. Got myself somewhere to live. That was easy. But I'm increasingly finding people who leave and they've got no idea how to do that. No idea how to get a doctor. No idea that you can register for social housing. I mean, it's so bizarre that that people don't know that.
Well, I suppose again, I go back to sort of the ages that we join up, and if you join up, I mean, my hierarchy of need again. I mean, they cater for all your needs. The clothier, they give you a group of mates. Your social network. You've got heating, you've got lighting, you've got showers. Well, if you're in the RAF, you might have a jacuzzi, of course. But I don't know if anybody in the RAF watching this later. And a Costa, but all everything sort of like your utilities are sort of pretty much catered for. So if you've never had to bother about worrying about that, when you leave, why would you know how to do that? Because it's not been really necessary to do that. So I used to have the same lot of lads in the criminal justice system. They said, "Oh, I can't budget," because what was left in the back pocket, after sort of like stuff had been taken out at source, it was their sort of beer money sort of thing. It was their living money. It was their enjoyment money. And of course, join civilian life, and it's not anymore. So yeah, if you think about, I mean, when I left, I wasn't very good at it, to be honest with you, because even in married quarters, there's a lot you don't need to do. That someone who's not military, if they were living in a house, do need to do. So yeah, I've heard that a lot, and I think I'm guessing you've heard that a lot with lads.
Yeah, I'd say 90% of people who leave are like that. Maybe even higher. The simple tasks that you take every day for granted, people struggle with, but it's because they've never had to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, you've never had to bother to learn to do that. I think one of the other areas is that military personnel are not very good at is actually selling themselves. You
Yeah,
know,
that's true.
I think you know, when people leave the military for however long you've been through the process, and I think you get a bit blasé, sort of you overlook the skills you've got because everybody else has got the core values and the team spirit, and they're willing to go on and put yourself, you know, at risk, or put someone else's needs above your own. I think because they're the norm, you think, well, everybody must have them skills, so I
Yeah,
won't bother telling anybody. So when it comes to sort of coming up military CV writing, things like that, sometimes people don't bother putting down that they're really good decision makers. They've got
yeah.
attention to detail. You know,
Time management, you know,
absolute
all
leadership
good
skills,
things.
absolutely magic skills. And you normally find civilian companies that want people like that,
Mm,
and yet military personnel, they're sort of like think, well, and everybody got them skills, so what bother mention it? And actually, no, they haven't.
yeah.
So they've got some fantastic transferable skills. But bear in mind, I'm ex-Navy, and this is probably scary for you being a soldier, of course. When you talk about stripping a gun, of course, well, I'm old school, SLRs in that day. But I was talking to a director of a big company, and I said, ask a soldier how to strip a gun. And she said, what do you mean? I said, ask him how to strip a gun. And luckily I had someone with me. My boss was there, 3 power, of course. But what we demonstrated with this intricate technical dance that someone will go through to maintain this piece of this mechanic. I mean, at the end of the day, it's prefabricated plastic and metal. But what they're looking for, how they're maintaining it, the knowledge in their head to make sure that that piece of equipment works when they need it. And this director said, but she said, I want people like that for my company that keep these great big machines working. So it wasn't a case of that military personnel don't have the skills. It's just sometimes maybe not be able to see that they can scale them up when actually they're the same human skills to, you know, attention to detail, looking for score, making sure things are clean, it's lubricated, all the different things. You know, that's a technical skill. So I think, yeah, we can undersell ourselves a little bit, and I'm really, I'm a bit of, it's a bit of a sort of like a bee in my bonnet. I think, you know, we really need to sort of like shout about how good our people are, and they are good people.
Well, I'm like was ex-infantry, so when I get lads or lasses come in that are from the infantry, they'll say, "Well, I haven't got any skills because only I can shoot people." That's it, and there's not
Yeah,
much call for that. You know what I mean? But there's just a million things transferable in the civilian life. You know,
absolutely.
like I said before, time management. Time management's one of the main things to a successful life,
Yeah.
in my opinion. You know, if you can manage to do things in a structured way, everything else will fall into place.
And absolutely, and again, what managers don't want a member of staff that they can trust to get on with the job, they'll stick with it. They don't have to be looking over the shoulder all the time, and they'll get it done on time, and they'll
Yeah.
be there on time. Certainly, I know that I know a couple of directors of some of the services, and they said they actively look for veterans because they know they come with them skill sets. You know, but I think, yeah, historically sometimes we don't push that. And so what I say to a lot of people who come on the courses is just say, look, hiring a veteran will be a really good decision for you because they come with all these skill sets.
Mm.
So I think the other part of that is just showing the people that do this CPD is actually the value that we can bring to organisations. You know, those skill sets that we might overlook, be a bit blasé about. Actually, companies want them. You
Yeah.
know, and I think it's really really helpful. So yeah, that's what I do really. God, blimey, I've trained about 3,500 staff now. A lot of the veterans mental health services. They worked with the TILS services, the complex services, and the new high intensity services, which is obviously, I think you had Tommy on the other week walking with the wounded on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been sort of engaging with them teams too. I've done a lot of work in Wales, believe it or not. You know, with criminal justice services, probation services, and it's all based around. There's actually a big desire from a lot of public services to actually understand that journey. I've done some sort of big projects with local authorities as well. And I think what's changed that is people signing the Armed Forces Covenant, which is great. Obviously, the more people do that, the better, as far as I'm concerned. And then actually an interest. I think the other thing that I sort of point out to people is how big the Armed Forces community is. I think a lot of people don't realise that. You know, and I ask people when they come on, have they ever had a family member served? Have they served themselves? Aunties, uncles, grandparents, siblings? And most of the time that people come on the course, 80% of them will say, oh yeah, I have had a family member served, or oh yeah, my granddad did, or my auntie, or I've served, or I've been a reservist, or a military partner, or something like that. And so you actually end up showing people that, you know, we live next door. You know, we work with people, you know, we're part of their teams. It might be them as well. I think that's the other part. Then you get the buy-in, people thinking, oh yeah, that actually this is bigger than what I thought. And actually, oh yeah, you know, my family members served, or my granddad did, or yeah. And I think what that does, it gets a little bit of ownership going on. And then once you've done that, the interest keeps, you know, it keeps that momentum going.
Well, in Sunderland, you have a massive ex-forces population, so there's always somebody in any room wherever we are. There's always someone either served or a family member served.
Yeah, I mean the Legion did a piece. I think they said it was 6.2 million people from the armed forces. I mean that's 1 in sort of 10, really. So you're not far away from a family member or someone that served. I think just letting people know that is helpful. And I think what I've found is people appreciate actually just being recognised for their connection. And a lot of people say, you know, veterans sort of like want to be treated differently. I'm not sure about that. I think sometimes people from the armed forces community just want to be recognised and say, actually, we're here, you know, and we are valuable, and just recognise us. We're not asking for anything more than, you know, not necessary sort of, you know, because when you go back to core values, some people are sort of unwilling to ask for help and they think they might not deserve it, or sometimes the way they've left the military, you know. I know one guy, unfortunately, he failed a drug test, and when he needed help, he said, "Oh, I don't really deserve it," you know. And some people are unwilling then, and everybody deserves help every now and again, and a hand and support, you know. So I think, it's just showing people that, you know, there's stuff out there. And I think, again, look at some of your other work, is getting that knowledge out there, what's available, because there's some fantastic stuff, as you know, but it's getting that information across. I mean, I have the emotional pathway pinned to my Twitter account, only because I think it's brilliant. I think it just helps people understand who have not had that conversation about how transition might feel for them, to actually sort of like blow a few myths away and say, actually, do you know something, it's okay, you know, it's okay to sort of have some of this stuff going on, and actually some of it's normal, some of it might not be. Well, if it's not, and if you want to ask, you know, you can ask for help, and it's okay to do that too. So I think that's what I do, and it's a privilege to be able to do that. And I think again, going into my core values, I think it's about paying it back. You know, I think I think it would be wrong of me not to share that. If I always think, if a service person or ex-forces person and their family went to a desk on a local authority or GP practice or whatever service that is, and I hadn't shared that some knowledge with them, and they asked for help, I've actually done them a disservice by not sharing that knowledge to the person they're asking for help. So I look at it as, if I can share some work with somebody, I give people a toolkit of services, what they can access. When someone asks for help, they can go, well, actually, yeah, we can help you. We've got some information here for you. And I think, like most of us, I think that's what drives a lot of us to do this. It's just paying it back into the community.
It is, and I'm privileged. I feel privileged every day when I'm doing this job. To be honest, I'm mad about the city I live in, and it's great to be able to help serving or ex-personnel. You know, it's something that it's good for me, but it's also, there's not many jobs where you've gone home on a night and you know, you feel really good about yourself. You know, you've actually changed someone's life so dramatically. You know, there's not many jobs you can do that in. I like I say, I'm thankful every day that I'm in a position to do it. Like,
it is great, isn't it? I mean, just giving someone a phone number, say, "Oh, have you phoned these?" and they can help you. Or, all right, you might not know how I spelled, but they can at least advise you. I mean, between us, you're sort of thinking once they ring that number, they're going to get the help they need.
yeah,
Just giving someone a number or web page or somebody or someone to talk to. Yeah, you can change people's lives. You can do some really good for the community. I think that's why most of us do it, to be honest.
yeah.
But again, it goes back to that sort of our journey where we've been, that looking after each other, and not the I statements, the we statements, which is the selfless commitment bit, isn't it?
What I always ask people who come on is, what was your favourite moment in the Navy, or your favourite place you were posted, and your worst, for whatever reason, worst, whether you, I don't know, whatever you've got.
So I was thinking about this because
because you've watched some of the podcasts.
Because I watched Tommy Squirm. I think where I was based, Yeovilton was beautiful. It was in Dorset, and I thought, I'm getting paid to live here. It's great, work on these big toys. It was a lovely place to be. Obviously, we deploy our ship was HMS Hermes, which obviously, sadly, recently has been sort of decommissioned. So yeah, being in Yeovilton was fabulous. And actually, you've just prompted me to think my worst. When you said worst moment, it was on the flight deck of Hermes, just off Norway, and it was minor stupidness. I don't know how cold it was. And I remember trying to chip away some of the ice from the sort of like the rings where you lash the aircraft down. And I had one of them moments like thinking, what the hell am I doing this for? I can't actually feel my hands and feet. I actually, if I hammer my hand right now, I probably wouldn't even feel it. So I think, I always think that's the coldest I've ever been in my life. So yeah, that's a cool
hopefully you never get that cold again, mate, the way the weather is at the minute.
Hopefully.
Thank you for coming on. It's been really informative. Is there anything you want to get out before we finish up? Is there any? Have you got any?
Want my guitar and give you a song, maybe?
No, you're all right. We don't do it. I can't afford the royalties.
No, I just it's great stuff you're doing, and the podcasts are great. And I think the way you're doing it is great, and just getting that message out there. And I think the other part of it is just showing people that might be considering asking for a little bit of advice and support. Maybe just watching one of them might be just show, look, it's okay. Just have a chat, pick the phone up.
That was the idea when we started them off. Until COVID happened, we just invested money in doing the podcast studio up, so we now have more guests and also be live where people can phone in. But we've never been able to do it because of COVID.
COVID's put a lot of
Once it's over, or it gets a little bit normality, we'll be into that, and then people can phone up for advice, or they can just phone up their abusers. Either way, it'll be a laugh.
Yeah, which people might do. Depends which service he's phoning in, of course.
Nice speaking to you, pal.
Thanks, Kerr. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks very much. Cheers.